Today, my colleagues and I from Crunchyroll's design team are going to show you how we convert Japanese anime logos into English. The first thing we need to do is deconstruct the Japanese logo. You'll see here that there's a main focal point, the kanji-style characters for spider, and some hiragana-style subtext, which translates to, I am, so what? Looking at the first portion of the logo, I sketched out a few ideas for the word spider in the kanji character style. For the most part, it's very linear and boxy. Once I'm happy with how the general shape of the letters look, I bring the original logo and my sketch into Adobe Illustrator to vectorize. I start to trace over the shapes of my sketch, adding in details of the kanji brush style and spider anatomy. I then continue to refine the lines and curves of each letter until it closely resembles the original logo. The Japanese logo is stylized and has spider legs extending out of the kanji. After tracing and refining the legs, I overlaid the word spider, adjusting for spacing and extending lines to keep the look and placement as close as possible. Now, most of you might be thinking, don't spiders only have 8 legs? In this case, I wanted to make sure that there was some consistency with the original logo, and it turns out that 10 legs helps the eye visualize the spider reference a little bit more. As I mentioned earlier, the Japanese logo is written in 2 character style types, kanji and hiragana. Here you can tell that the kanji should be the focal point and the hiragana is more of a subtext. Keeping this in mind, I decided to use the font style from existing assets as the subtext and used it to frame out the word spider. Looking at the composition altogether, the linear kanji style connected to the legs makes it a bit difficult to read the word spider. I added some curves into the lettering and removed some of the connecting lines to make it more legible. Here's the final design next to the original logo.
I first download the Japanese version of the logo, along with the translation breakdown chart. After I look at these files, I first do some background research into the anime to understand the mood and the storyline. The first thing I do after my initial research is to open the Japanese logo and begin looking at typefaces that I feel best fit the design I'm aiming for. In this case, I started with a sans serif font named Museo Sans. Once I have the base font selected, I start looking for elements in the Japanese logo that I can translate over to the English version. The first element that really stood out to me was the jagged ends of some of the characters. I also noticed a lot of the large sweeping curves of the Japanese logo and worked to incorporate these into the R of rent and the G and D of girlfriend. The first pass of the logo was fairly simple and clean, but was rejected as it strayed away from the feeling conveyed by the Japanese version. With the new feedback from the brand management team to use less curves and add more verticality, I continued to use the same Museo Sans space typeface, but added a large amount of modifications to this second pass. I broke down a lot of the Japanese characters and incorporated these elements into the English version of the logo. Another major difference between the first version and the second version was the adjustment of character angles and the modification of many ascenders and descenders, meaning the tops and bottoms of each character. Having the chance to make major modifications to a typeface and really personalize the letter forms was definitely my favorite part of this project. First, take a look at the Japanese logo and the translation chart that is provided by the brand managers. I take this information and do a little research into the background of the show to get a feel for the mood I'm designing for, which Seton Academy is definitely a wild one. I then search for a typeface that I feel matches the Japanese logo style and mood and start my base design off of that. After creating the base logo, I look for design elements on the Japanese version that I can use. And in this case, for Seton Academy, I was able to use the paw print, fox ears and tails, sunrise, as well as the lightning bolts. I also heavily adjusted the weight and angles of the typeface to fit the Japanese version. Once all these steps are done and everything has come together, an English logo magically appears.